Welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast, where we talk about the struggles and celebrations that leaders and entrepreneurs experience on their journey to success. I'm your host, Kristina, and I'm passionate about helping you achieve massive amounts of success at work and at home. We'll talk about all things people and organizational wellness, share relatable stories, and feature insightful guests because quality people and processes are at the heart of every success story. Ready to learn, grow, and have fun? Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast. I'm your host, Kristina Schmitt. Last episode, I talked about how to bring people on board. So I went through the hows and whys and some behind the scenes things on how to best bring a new team member on board to your team. This week, I'm going to take a bit of a flip, and maybe you need to listen to these episodes in the opposite order. But today, I'm going to talk about a question that I get from a lot of clients and that I know I struggled with myself as a leader. And it sounds, we don't like to talk about it, especially those of us in leadership and development, because we do want to develop everybody to their highest potential. But sometimes if we're truly honest with ourselves, the best way we can help them is to let them go. So today I want to talk about that pull that we feel when we know something isn't working and we're trying to question, do we need to do more, or at what point do we give up? So I want to be mindful of some trigger things that might come around, for anyone who's been let go in the past or has let somebody go and was still not sure about it. Maybe this is going to be a hard episode to listen to, or maybe it'll be refreshing to like that, maybe there were some real considerations, or maybe you can see that ultimately it was for the best. So let's get into it. Ultimately, I'm going to try to give you a way to make something that feels like it should be objective, but isn't as objective as it could be, because there is a lot of self-reflection and questions to be asked, as well as questions that we have to do our best to get the answers from the other person and get things from them, and kind of a prediction of the future, much like hiring is. So let's get into it. The very first thing, I guess, let's set the scenario first. You have someone on your team that isn't working. You feel like you're constantly frustrated. They just don't seem to get it, or maybe everything is late, or maybe you've been working with them for a while and you're just like, I know it's not working, but you're just trying to say, at what point do I cut ties? Or do I keep pressing? Do I keep trying? So here are I'm going to give you 3 steps with some sub-steps to them, as all of my steps have. But 3 steps that kind of will take you through a thought process and some practice that you need to do and some questions you need to ask, both yourself and the other person, to make this decision at least a little bit clearer. So step 1, first you need to check in with yourself. So ultimately, this is a you decision that you need to make as the leader. You need to check in with yourself as to why you're having this question. Why are you struggling with this person? And this is hard. And I'm going to have you come back to this question after we go through some steps as well. But the first step, check in with yourself. Why do you have this question in your head? Are there some things that are pretty blatant that maybe you haven't noticed or you don't want to admit? Or is this something to do with like a bias that you might have, or a preconceived notion that you might have, or a personal conflict that you might have? Just check in with yourself first. Like, why do you feel this way? What feelings do you actually have? Are they true? Are they perceptions? Whatever it may be. All right. So after you've done that self check-in reflection, we're still on step 1. It's still a self-evaluation. The next thing I want you to check in with is, do you believe that they can do the job to your expectations? So this may have accuracy, may have data behind it, but there is still a sense of perception and belief behind it. And if you recall some of my more recent episodes about leadership models, that belief is huge. I'll tell a bit of a story. I had someone working for me and I didn't believe they could do that job. So I would kind of help them, but I was very demotivated to help them because I really and truly did not think they could do the job. Ultimately, I think they did not do the job, or they were never, like when I look back, I know they couldn't do it the way I wanted it done. So we'll say that. Could they have done it better? Possibly. I do think that it was outside of this person's realm of where they should be and where they could bring the most value. But I did not believe they could do it. And therefore, my effort was not the same as if I said, I know you can do this. Just like, let's get over this gap. So there was a difference in my attitude and that time and that effort and that ability that I was capable of putting in because of that belief, because I did not have the belief that they could do it. So I'm not going to try as hard. If you don't have the belief that they can do it, go back to question 1A and say why, right? Like figure out why. Is there evidence that they really and truly can't? Or is this something that's you, right? Like that's what we have to figure out, right? And this could be your decision point. This could come down to, I'm trying not to say ultimately, because my goodness, I want to say it again. But this could be the decision factor. If you cannot convince yourself that you need to help this person, then you're not the person to help them. And that's what I mean with sometimes we have to take a step back and help them move along rather than help them ourselves. So that is a thing. It's not the end all be all, but it is a thing. The second part of that is we need to be very aware of our own bias when we're asking ourselves this question. There's two big ones that I want to touch on: the cognitive bias. So one thing that you need to be mindful of when you're doing these questions, so this, do I believe they can do it? And what's really behind that belief is a cognitive bias. So these cognitive biases are something that our brains do automatically to shortcut because it's the brain's job to preserve energy. So therefore it's going to find shortcuts. So there are, there's the whole thing, someone like you is safer, therefore they're more acceptable. Or there's the confirmation bias. I think that you've done this, so I'm going to find all the reasons that are true. So when we're looking at this belief, we want to look at the belief and we want to understand, is there a bias at play that's helping us to not see clearly? So if we find that there is, like maybe we're the only ones who feel this way and actually this person is performing wonderfully, and it's just some kind of thing that you two can't get along well, okay, then there's probably a bias of sorts or some kind of disagreement that has happened and needs to be brought to the surface and dealt with. The solution still might be to separate ways, but at least we understand the whys behind it and the what it is. Okay, so that's kind of our step one, is check in with yourself, right? That's the step one. Step two, does this person meet my company's values? So in theory, we would have checked this upon hiring, but a lot of times we don't. A lot of times we say, this person's got a great resume and they seem really efficient. Well, let's bring them on. The thing with values is they are most of the time very innate in us. And I'm not saying that you can't have different belief systems. Like you can have all sorts of like faith beliefs, you can have all sorts of political beliefs, but these values of let's work really hard, get everything done, but laugh while we're doing it. Let's problem solve and seek solutions. Like there are people that are innately that way. And then there are people that don't want to do that. And they aren't innately that way. They may or may not fit in your organization. And likely if it's a core value, so that's ultimately what I'm talking about. Are they fitting within your core values? So if it's a core value, then they have to meet that, right? There might be ways to bring them up and you can work on that in development. But if they are very far from the value and there's a big gap there, then you're going to have a problem with fit and you're going to have a problem with behavior likely. And it may not be your blatant behavior, you're not showing up to work, but it might be subtle things. I'll tell you a story again, full of stories today. Back when I was a plant manager, I had somebody who on paper ticked all the boxes. He was efficient. He got his work done. He did a great job getting parts out the door. Those kind of technical things were met. So things worked. We had overtime kind of under control. Scheduling worked. Like everything worked. But he was almost like a poison on the team. And the managers couldn't work with him. The team didn't like him. There was trust issues. And I had trust issues. So we just ultimately, this behavior was terrible and I couldn't fix it. It was actually breeding a bigger problem. And we had to part ways because this wasn't working. So one thing that I really want to hit home with this second one and this core values check is that behaviors and values have just as much to do with work performance as the actual technical aspects of the work. That might feel hard to say because I know I've said it myself, and I know people have said it to me that like, hey, they get the work done. They're a little rough around the edges, but it kind of works. We just keep those people away from each other and it's fine. Or we just don't approach this person in the morning and, as long as we get them after they had their coffee, they're fine. Or not on a Monday or not after a long weekend or, like when you find there's a lot of caveats to how this person works or needs to work, we need to start asking, is it because they don't fit the values? And that is a serious discussion and a serious impediment to the success of the team. Because when we're working around somebody all the time, it puts a hole in the team. It builds distrust. And when we have distrust, we have tearing apart. We can't have safe conflict. We can't get to the best solution. We can't argue properly because we've got something holding us back and like a big elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about. And that's a problem. So if this person does not fit your values, that is worth a conversation with this person to say, these are our values. I observe a gap. What are your thoughts on trying to close this gap? So it follows the same, this is what I expect, this is what I've observed. What do you think about it? Process that we have for constructive feedback. And it's just as important. It's just as critical and it's worthy of the conversation. So this is a great conversation to have if you're questioning, because now you can get this person's feel for it, because they might say, I can't stand this environment or something like that. Like you might really see their true colors at this point and say, yeah, definitely not part of our values. Or you might see them saying, oh my gosh, I was really doing this, this, and this. And you know what? Or I've been trying to work on this. Can you help me? And you actually might be able to close some of the gap there. But when we're talking core values, sometimes it's harder. So you've got to have that conversation and that real check and balance. Now, if your company does not have clearly set out core values, I know I have a blog article. I can't remember if I have a podcast episode about it, but I've talked about it quite a bit, what core values are. Taken on Patrick Lencioni's view on it, where you've got core values, which are these like innate things that the team and the culture does, versus aspirational values, which is what we want to achieve. So when we say like, we are the best problem solvers in the world, and yet we like to walk past the problems, right? That's aspirational. We want to be the problem solver or the problem catchers of things and fix them right away. But if we're not doing it, it's not core. Versus the pay to play ones, like these are just like, hey, we respect people. It's like, yeah, well, that's just kind of good human behavior, versus we respect people to the utmost degree that when they walk in the door, we make sure that they have a coffee, they are warm enough, they have somewhere to sit, we have this welcoming environment, and we give little gifts or whatever defines super duper respect people. That could be core. Versus general human behavior is just pay to play sort of stuff. Like must have. If you don't have respect for people, you don't belong here, right? And then finally, the accidental values. Accidental ones I like to talk about are meetings start 5 minutes late. We didn't mean for that to happen, but we always show up 5 minutes late. So no one shows up until a minute or two late and they're still on time. So that's an accidental value, not a good one. Albeit you could find an accidental value that is like, hey, we hire young families. We hire parents of young families, and that's all we have here. Like you can have an accidental value that is a value of your company, and you just had a lot of bias and ended up hiring people like you. So that's what I mean by when I say core values. So you need to make sure that your team members all align with those core values, give them an opportunity to work on it. And if it doesn't, and they don't close a gap by a certain date, then it is time to move on, and they're going to fit better and be happier and less frustrated in a place where they do fit the values. So keep that in mind. And the third one is how long, this one has many parts, so just bear with me. How long have you been helping this person, and what's that progress look like? So there are times when you've consistently been working with somebody and you've had very clear goals, and they're either meeting them or not meeting them. What I find most of the time, so this is like the part A of this question, is that we probably haven't been putting the clarity or the effort in that we wanted to or should have been. So that's the question. Part A is, how hard have you been working on it? Do you have a very clear goal that is checked in upon regularly? And are you actually supporting them? And what do I mean by that? I mean, not just saying, oh, you didn't get it done. Why not? What's going on? How are you going to fix it next time? Not that. Meaning, hey, I know you're working on it and you didn't get there this week. What are you going to do differently? How can I help? What do you need to get there? Let's make the goal smaller. Let's check in 2 days and see how you're doing instead of a week. Let's check, like supportive. You can still be assertive, but you need to be supportive as well. So are you actually taking a piece of the development and walking with them and doing that work? Or have you kind of just been saying, hey, you best get it fixed? There is going to be a time and a place for both of those things. Ideally, you can be the first. You can be that super supportive boss for them, that super supportive leader. But there's going to be times, there's going to be role levels, there's going to be places in life when you can't hand walk them there. And there's going to be situations in your career where you're saying, I don't have the time I want to desperately. And you're either going to have to say, I have to hire someone else to do the work and still help you develop, or have them move on to a place where they can be more successful. Like maybe the environment is just too rigid or demanding for this person and they aren't going to get there. And even if they did get there, they might be completely miserable, just to be honest. So that goes back into number one. I told you I'd come back to number one. Well, how is my effort? And do I have the time or the will? So this kind of goes back to skill or will, but it's more like time. Do I have the time or the will to put that effort in? And if you don't, then again, your best help is probably to help them move on. And it sounds tough and I hate doing it. And I think we all hate doing these things. But if we can help this person, if we can help them move along to somewhere where they're going to be more successful, then you are too, they are, and ultimately everybody is better off. So some things that, again, may be helpful here, check their working genius. Okay, are they working completely outside of their working geniuses? All right, maybe. And how can you support that better? So that's a great thing to check. Just check in, do they have things going on outside that are troubling them? I've had, if I were to be working for someone else over these last couple of years in my life, I think I would have some performance issues probably because I've had kind of a crazy couple of years. So you might have that happen and then you can discuss that with them. So these are great things to check on in this step or in some of the earlier steps or before you even get to this point, as some considerations as well. Ultimately, I was given this advice many, many, many moons ago, and I do find it rings true, and it's been interlaced throughout this. But if you find that you're managing around someone, so you're always, covering up for them. You're always taking things off their plate and moving them to someone else's. And you're always somehow you can't manage them with the same basic over process as everybody else. Now, caveat here, everybody needs different levels of you, right? So I'm going to kind of say this with a caveat to it, right? Everybody needs a different part of you to do well. But there is a difference here. If you are covering up for them, making up for their work, taking on their work, that's not managing them the way they need it. That is managing around them. So if you find yourself managing around people or around a specific person, go through these steps. Start with number one. See if there's something that is, going on. Why? See how far they are from where you want them to be. And see if they meet the values or they don't meet the values. And then, assess how long have I actually been helping this person? Have I put forth the effort that I should have? So I know in my experiences, there was a long kind of around in circles because I always wanted to make sure I did my best because sometimes I didn't. And, sometimes it did come back to that question one, I wasn't willing to, or I didn't think they could. So I guess 3 or 1. But ultimately, that will came in there and that belief of mine did come in, and it does come in for you, and it will, because that's what drives our behaviors. So if it's very much depending on your behavior to change this person, then you have to consider your belief system or your time or what's happening in your company, and most certainly if they meet your values. I hope this was helpful for you. If you're struggling with something, run through the steps. We'll have them kind of more clearly laid out in the show notes for you. But basically, it's first check in with yourself, check in with your values, check in on what you've done so far, and are you willing to do more or keep doing it, or is it just way too far away? So that's the summing it up. If you enjoyed this episode or you found it helpful, please like it, share it with a friend, leave a review, and let us know what is wonderful about and why you keep coming back to listen to the Business Building Blocks podcast. So we will see you on the next episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Business Building Blocks podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. If you found value in our conversation, please leave a quick review, like, or share. It helps us reach more amazing listeners like you. For more resources and insights, visit KristinaSchmitt.ca, where you can find tools and support to empower your leadership journey. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.